I greet you with three words: bliss, honor, prosperity. Let's get into the rest of the information about the Creeks and the Seminoles, shall we? Now, this is just coming from part 3. I only gave you a blanket of part 3, but we're going to give you the whole part 3, and we're going to break this whole thing down, dealing with the Black Muskogee. The Black Muskogee. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, leading a 45-man expedition, slowly made their way up the Missouri River in 1804, exploring the upper portions of the Louisiana Purchase to find a route across, guess what, the Continental Divide to the Pacific Ocean. When they arrived at the Archival villages over 1,000 miles from St. Louis, Clark showed the Indians his compasses, surveying instruments, mirrors, and assorted other trinkets. Assorted other trinkets. But the Archives were more interested in York. Who was York? Clark's black slave. Black. They wasn't even using that word back then. They thought him of something strange. He danced and sang for the Indians, who repeatedly rubbed his skin in an attempt to remove the paint. So you're telling me that the same indigenous people who had just enough of a dark hue, again, we're using this as a reference. I'm not making this up. Read it in wheat. We're looking at York and trying to rub the paint off his skin. Can't make this up. And as you can see, it has a source. So let's keep going. The Arcada's fascination exemplified the gulf between the culture of the Plains Indians and that of the Southeastern Indians. They tried to rub the paint off the skin of the Southeastern Indians. Do you get it? It had nothing to do with what you're thinking about. You're seeing socio-political constructs being used in the books that you're reading, and this being Creeks and Seminoles. I'm not making this up. They tried to rub the paint as they thought it was. When you look at pictures of Plains Indians back in the 1800s, they're just as dark as the Southeast Indians. How does that make any damn sense? Look at Geronimo's. I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to leave it alone. Just look at Geronimo. I'll just say that. Look at Geronimo. You can't make this shit up. Now, they're trying to solidify everything that I'm talking about. Africans had resided in the Southeast for almost 3 centuries, and in 1804, no Muskogee rubbed any Negro's skin to see if the paint might come off. We're just talking your ancestors already being in the Southeast woodland regions, and here you have people trying to tell you that these people are West African when you go back and you look into the archives of Spain and different other archives of Hispaniola. They will tell you that these people were mulatto in complexion. They were called Ladino. But yet they're trying to take the dark complexion and turn it into a solidified, synonymous version of their narrative that your ancestors came from Africa. I'm not saying that African slaves didn't come here. What I'm trying to get you to understand is, or comprende, they, through curriculum, are trying to make you believe that all of your ancestors came here if you're a person of color. So pay attention. And this is why 3 groups of races. Race is a man-made construct that's neither scientific nor anthropological in nature, according to the Office of Management and Budget. Why are they talking race? This is how they create the narratives that they do. Even when it comes to medical, in the scientific terms, medical, they can't call you black or call you this and call you that. They don't know how this shit works. It is all bound upon a political construct. Everything has a political boundary. That's what creates the imaginary borderlines. It's the political boundaries. This is your caste system. 3 groups of races had long lived in the Southeast. And out of this assemblage emerged a people who, for the lack or better phrase, can be labeled Black Muskogee. They were just Muskogee. They were not labeled black. That's a caste. They're trying to create a caste within a system of indigenous people that are originally to the land. Originally meaning of the land. You can't make this up. They were not a phrase. They were not a phrase. These are people who were indigenous to the land. So they were not a cohesive group. By the late 18th century, see how they skipped the whole century? Now you get it. They skipped a whole century just to create this narrative. By the late 18th century. Why is it the late 18th century? Because you have to skip everything in between to show who these people actually were and the land that they actually had. Wow. By the late 18th century. Peep that. See the brackets? That's what you got to pay attention to. Blacks or Negroes or Africans. See? They're showing you right there the reclassification system that's going on by the late 18th century, whether slave or free. Whether slave or free. Now, we all know that slave is the Slav. Slavic people are your slaves. Anybody dealing with this reclassification that they're telling you of these 3 are enslaved POWs, prisoners of war. They were not slaves. So why would you try to make that synonymous with something it has nothing to do with? We're just looking at the historical perspective from its proper scale. We're going to break this down a little more. And I could keep going, but I don't want to have to go into a graph mode where I got to explain every paragraph that I'm reading. But I guess I might as well do it now because this is our daily bread. But going forward, I won't do it. I guarantee you I won't do it. And they implemented the word Africans. There's no such thing as a black race in Africa. I just want to paint that and make it clear There's no such thing as a black race in Africa. So stop with the bullshit. We know this for certain. You're calling all of these tribal people out of their names and giving them a misnomer for what? All because you got caught up in the American system and the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the Spaniards' rendition of Negro. You've been called out. We're going through your archival records. Ain't nothing you can do about it. We know who the fuck we are. And I'm tired of y'all acting like you don't know who the fuck you are. Whether slave or free. Resided in the Indian countries and Talwas. Owned plantations and sometimes in separate black communities. See? Do you see that? Sometimes in separate black communities. Indian, and then you turn it into black communities. You can't make this shit up. There were more black communities of Indian, American Indian people than the Indians that you're talking about. Whatever the domicile, I told you. What is the Latin word? Vacum domicilium. That's what they lived on. Vacum domicilium. Whether their domicile, legal status, see, it goes into legalese. I'm just reading this with you, for you, so that you can understand. Vacum domicilium. Look up that word, vacum domicilium. That's the dead language of the Latin. That's your original legalese. That's what they live by. That's how they control your land. Vacum domicilium. Legalese, legal status, and ethnic background. They were numerous. Let me turn this page. And the presence was pervasive. Unfortunately, they have left few accounts of their life amongst the Muskogee. Information about these Negroes most often come from whites apprehensive about the threat black Indians pose to the peculiar institution. Occasionally, literate or semi-literate Indian countrymen and mestizos factors commented on Negroes in their midst. Mestizos. Now do you get it? Who are these mestizos? Who are these whites? Who are these mestizos? I ain't making this up. From Chickasaw to Chickasaw. Our ancestors were Chickasaw. I ain't making this up. And like I said, Creeks and Seminoles, the Seminoles. I ain't making this up. Give us this day our daily bread. Maybe next time I'll play some music to keep you energized. But I just wanted you to see this information right here for your own divinity on who we are and how they paint us and how they did a remix single to implement African into this soil. Bliss up, people.